I mean, there have been times in my life when I've felt a lot worse. Yeah, that's why people say, Grease, you're so happy on a Monday, on a holiday. You got to be working. How come you're not bummed out? Bummed out? Because I got nothing to be bummed out about. Every problem I have now is small in comparison to a problem I used to have. I don't care whether it's a divorce, hangnail. I don't care whether you get fired. I don't care if somebody close to you kicks the bucket. There is no problem bigger than the problem of staying alive. That's a problem I had a long, long time ago. Back when the name on my uniform said Greaseman, but everybody knew me as Sergeant Fury. Quang Tree, 1967. I was high above the Mekong Delta in a chopper. We had a bunch of suspected VC, and they were sitting there with their hands tied behind them. I spoke fluent Vietnamese. I had him by the open door of the chopper. I said to him, one of them just looked at me smugly. So I put my size 11 combat boot in his back and gave him a shove. Well, his other two buddies went wide-eyed when they saw that. So I walked up to the second man. I said, well, he was ready to talk. He didn't tell me anything. He went, I need him in the chin. And we watched him spin end over end over end to the ground. Well, you wanted to get home for the holidays, right, Zim Nip? Well, I turned to the third guy. He was white. And he told me everything. He told me supply routes. He told me amount of enemy concentration. He told me they're infiltrators. He told me their security. He told me everything. Then I shook a camel out of the pack and put it between his lips. He visibly relaxed as I flicked my bick, held the flame to the camel. But before he could get that smoke in his lungs, I backhanded him between the eyes with my elbow. Hey, haven't you heard? Smoking's bad for your health, you maggot. Well, we were all having a couple of good laughs there when suddenly the radio crackled. I was to return to base immediately. When I got there, emergency leave. My grandfather was deathly ill on his deathbed. I was granted emergency leave because grandfather was a personal friend of Admiral Philbottom, and so they arranged it for me. And there is really a weird sensation when you are in the thick of a war zone, when you've just come back with another human's blood on your hands, to be walking down 54th Street in Times Square with your head still ringing from the gunfire. It's unbelievable. There are people going to newspapers, going to school, dating girls, taking the subway, and you're still hearing the sounds of battle rage in your brain. I went to see grandfather, and he died in my arms. Then I called a cab, and I went to our cold water flat on the Lower East Side, and I went to meet up with Estelle. I wasn't quite sure what to say to her. I knew she'd want me. But on a 3-day pass to Saigon, I'd picked up Vietnamese venereal disease. I was literally oozing with infection. I figured the best thing to do was come right out and tell her. So I walked through the door. She was there. She came running to me. I said, Estelle, before you touch me, there's something you have to know. She said, shh, don't say it. I figured you'd read between the lines in my letters. I guess by now you know I'm seeing another man. I said, what? She said, yes, I met a man at work, and oh, God, neither one of us wanted it to happen. He's married, too, but one thing led to another. We went out for dinner, and before I knew it, he was kissing me, and a couple of days later, we were intimate, and frankly, Nino, I'd like a divorce, and I can't go on like this. I'm going to marry him and have his children. We've always been very open and honest with each other, and he's the man for me. Now, I know it's going to hurt you. I know you've just come back from the war, but you've got to understand how I need a man, Nino. I need a man with me! Well, my blood just boiled through my veins. I felt a pounding in my temples. I wanted to put my hands around her throat right then and there. I wanted to squeeze the life out of the wench! But instead, I said, Estelle, we've been together 5 years now, and I think you owe me one final hobble. I'm getting on that plane in 45 minutes. I'm going to be back. I may not ever come back alive. This guy's going to have you for the rest of his life. You owe me, Estelle, one final hobble. And so, Estelle, more out of guilt than desire, took me to her arms and hungrily made wanton love. And with every thrust of that diseased fuselage, I felt like revenge! Revenge was mine! Wordlessly, I got out of the bed. When it was over, lit a Camel, and got dressed and walked to the door. I opened it. She said, Nino. I looked back. I said, what, Estelle? She said, you never brought me a souvenir from Vietnam. I said, don't worry. You'll have one in 3 to 5 days.